Okay, hello. We're live. About a 20-second lag or so to YouTube, but we're live. Random Patreon hangout for May, post Superbooth chat, a nice YouTube. I left my own. I've been telling everyone to mute the YouTube link if they have the page open, and yet I haven't muted the link. Usual, casual, all goes wrong kind of start for me, but yeah, random chat. Let's have a quick intro from everyone, just so everyone watching knows who everyone is. Vlad, how are you?
Just a second. Hi, I'm fine, thank you. I'm Vladimir from VPME, currently here near Frankfurt in Germany. I'm at a friend's place, actually, because I'm just traveling back from Happy Nobbing, which is the biggest German modular meet, non-commercial, privately organized. It's in its 12th year. It's in the middle of nowhere, which basically means nobody knows where there's a room full of awfully expensive equipment. So we had Cinti AKSs and VCS3s, and we had 5U, 4U, 3U, TICE. We had all the systems, all the modular stuff that you can imagine.
All the modulars.
All the modulars, all the German modulars. They were in one place, but we don't tell anybody where it is because and nobody wants to go there.
I didn't realize that was 12 years in.
Well, it's my third year, but the guys have been doing it since it's in the 12th year, and it's really great. It's a Friday noon. It's Friday noon until Sunday noon. Basically, Friday everybody arrives, sets up. Saturday they prepare their patches, and then Saturday evening there's a big barbecue, and afterwards everybody gets to play. I mean, who wants to play can play. So we had like 4.5 hours of everybody giving a short demo, like 5 minutes each.
Okay. Did everyone sync their clocks and try and jam together? Or
No. We have played one after the other.
Yeah,
and it's compared to Superbooth, it's really nice because it's a headphone-only event. So during the day, it's all quiet and relaxed. You can chat, you can talk. Everybody's sitting with headphones in front of the system, setting up. And then, of course, in the evenings, the live jams are on the speakers, but one after the other, not all together.
Yeah, I've known people try and do that. It comes up quite regularly. We should all sync clocks and jam, and oh god, it's horrible. It is always horrible. The Bafako guys got quite close at Superbooth this year. They had cables running under a rug, then they taped sync right across the rug, and I think they'd agreed some kind of key or bass tuning. It was musical for the most part, but yeah, cool. And the earliest riser, as we go down the line, Morgan, how are you?
Yeah, I'm good. I'm good. It's 5 o'clock here in Australia. But yeah, luckily my Superbooth jet lag is helping me get up.
Yeah, nice. Yeah. So you make the left-right mid-side, mid-side left-right module, which I think more people need to realize they can effectively get stereo effects out of mono modules with that thing, which starts to be exciting.
Yeah, I've got one right here behind me. and also vector space, which is a weird cubic modulation matrix thingamy job.
I have both actually. There's the old red paneled one up there.
Oh yeah,
I think
DIY one.
Yeah, I'm misadvertising that one. I'm advertising the discontinued older one, but yeah, cool. And Andrew from SSF, Steady State.
Yes.
How are you?
Good.
First
Doing
time
well.
Superbooth the past couple of weeks.
Yep, that was my first time. It was amazing. That was probably one of the best, if not the best, synth show I've ever been to.
Yeah, I think it manages to retain some of that kind of meat feel to some degree. Even though it is a big trade show at this point.
It was nice.
Yeah. New Bantam, semi-modular from you. Yeah. I mean, we'll get on to products and things and a bit more like that. Stereo filter, stereo VCA, new mute mix VCA module, new Fruit Zero oscillator. You had a lot of stuff.
Yeah, I do.
Envelope follower, character
busy.
Compressor. Yeah. We'll come on to that as we go. Joran from Your Analog, how are you?
Hi, I'm fine, thanks.
Eurorack's butteriest, smoothest filter was the general gist, I think.
Yeah, I guess that was a goal, yeah.
How was it for you? Was this first time exhibiting? Did you go in previous years?
No, so I was at the Superbooth last year just as a visitor, basically. So exploring the place, and yeah, this year as a manufacturer for the first year. So yeah, I mean, it was great. Really tiring, but still great.
Yeah. I mean, I'm wandering around with a camera and Matthew and Greg that I do stuff with, but I didn't have to stand in one place and say the same thing, you know, God knows how many times every single day. The same thing.
I don't think you saw, but I actually brought a stool on the.
I did see.
Yeah, just to make it.
No.
So yeah, you borrowed it for a bit. Yeah, but I can't stand for long times, so I had to make sure I had something. So.
Yeah. Well, it's what?
It was interesting, you know, getting that on the train all the way to Berlin, but it was worth it.
I saw while I was in Berlin, I mean, yours was like a nice little stool. As we were going to Patch Point or Tacoma's place the day after, there was two guys with a 3-piece suite. So 2 chairs, like huge armchairs, and a 2-person sofa. And both of them got them on and off the train. Just 2 people. So they took a chair each really quick, and then both went back for the sofa, sat on them with their feet up, and then got off where we did. And you'd stack the chairs up on one guy, like trying to carry this stuff. Crazy.
Try doing that in a plane.
And you
go on, Vlad, sorry.
And you complain if you have to carry a 6U104, right?
Yeah. yeah. I have to get someone else to carry it for me.
Well, you teach your kids. I mean, hurry up.
Yeah, well, my little girl Lorna's only 8 months, so she manages a few patch cables. She's just about got this motion down. Yeah. That's about. You can hang some longer cables around the neck, but she's no good for manual labor, not yet. And last but not least, Jason from Instro. How's it going?
It's good.
Ton of new stuff as well at Superbooth. The new complex oscillator, which everyone kept saying to me, DPO killer. I'm not, you know, I wouldn't defend one person's product over someone else's, but just a really weird term to kind of be. You know,
I know. I always, whenever demoing it, describing it, I'm always very active to try and just describe it for what it is, and I tried as little as possible to compare it to other stuff that's out there, and I do that with all modules, because there's so much stuff that is, it's an envelope's an envelope, a VCA is a VCA, like it's,
Yeah, we've had dual complex oscillators before. Yeah. We all kind of know where they come from. And there's other ones. It's not like the DPO was the only one in the format and then one more comes along and that's the DPO killer, where at least that kind of makes sense. But, there's a handful of them at least. So it was a really weird, that was one of the things from Superbooth that I got a ton of messages saying the exact same thing. Really, really strange. Yeah. But also a range of single oscillators, filter, the slider performance, custom thing.
Yeah. Exactly what a few new things. Like last year was the first Superbooth I did, and I think I had 4 or 5 modules really that I was showing off. So I've more than doubled the product line last year. So I've just sort of been working away, doing things small scale, selling direct, and just building up the range. So
yeah. Well, for people watching live, and if you're not watching live and you're just watching this back on YouTube, leave a comment. If I can't answer, I will ask anyone that's here and I'll get back to you. But for people live, just fire away with questions. It's a really informal, we'll kind of hang around for roughly an hour, general chat, I guess. To kick things off, we'll kind of go product stuff, I guess, is an easy way to get people chatting. You had a few new things as well this year, Vlad, right?
Yeah, I had a few new things. So one of the things that was really interesting that everybody picked on was that I put my Euclidean circles in a little standalone box, because I made it for one customer who loved the module, but he said he didn't have any Eurorack, so I built it into a box. So suddenly the press picked it up and said, like, this is the new product from VPME, which is funny because I just sold another one at this Happy Nobbing event. So I've now sold 4 or 5 of these. So maybe I should make it a regular thing.
Yeah, has that got its own power built in?
No, it's just a wall wart, 5 volts wall wart, and then you can
Okay.
And then you can go. So the stuff that I had at Superbooth was I wish Superbooth had been in September, because I would have been more ready with some stuff, but it's what it is. So I showed it just as a preview. So one of the things, or basically there's 3 things. So one is my precision adder, the T43. It's already out now, but I've still showed it as something new, which is a A+B ±C precision adder that's really precise. And then you can transpose using the switches on top, which basically you have 1, 2, 4, 12, and 24 semitones that you can add or subtract. Yeah, that's the one. So if you add them all up, you have plus 43 semitones. And if you subtract them, you have minus 43 semitones. And of course, all the combinations. So if you want to add 9, you have to add like 12 and subtract 3. So you have to do a little bit of math as well.
Okay, keeping people on their toes while they're playing.
Nobody likes to do math.
Yeah, exactly. But it's also. I mean, I made it as a static transposer, but then the first customers who got it, like for test customers, they said, "Oh, it's so cool because they can basically play it on stage. Just put one hand on the switches and wiggle them." And they were happy that the switches were so good. So one guy said, "I wiggled them all night and they still work." So it can be. It's also something playable, not just a static transposer.
Yeah, well, that was my take on it when I saw it at Ross Lamon's Bells and Whistles event in November last year.
Right.
I've been able to switch things up and down an octave, a tone or 2 down or up a tone, semitones up and down. It's really useful. And I think stuff like that's overlooked. I do get asked a fair bit, where can I find octave switches? And usually the ALM Beast chalkboard is the one that I see mentioned. But to have more options than that, it is really useful. I'd probably put it, just kind of thinking out loud, before a quantizer. And then it wouldn't matter if I added like a major third or a minor third, because I could just switch in and out and the quantizer deal with it.
Yeah, sure.
But yeah, you also had the quad drum module as well.
Yeah, exactly. That's this one. So I haven't it powered up because as I said, I'm at a friend's place, so I can just show it like it is. So it's 4 drum voices. There's one in each corner. Every color is a drum voice. It's a mixture of modeling and sample-based stuff. So it's kind of like a braids for drums, but I don't like to say that loud. The idea that I have is I want to have like a library of, let's say, 12 different drum algorithms or different drum voices, and you can pick 4 of them. And then each of them has 3 parameters. I mean, for a bass drum, for example, it's pitch, it's decay, and it's the kick amount. For the snare, it's the tuning and the decay and the snare amount, stuff like that. And then it's also made in order to be playable or for performers. So it has those 4 buttons at the bottom, and it has this 3-way switch in the middle. And basically, in one position of the switch, those buttons are mutes, so you can basically mute and unmute your drums. In the middle position of the switch, you basically have a built-in mixer, so you can select one of the drums and change the volume or change the panning. It has 2 outputs, so you can basically have a 4x2 mixer. And at the bottom position of the switch, you have access to 4 CVs. So it's 12 pots, but it doesn't have 12 CV inputs. It has only 4, but they are basically assignable. So you can pick which of the pots you want to have fixed and which of them are under CV control. And this central encoder acts as your attenuator.
Yeah, I think we spoke about, you had a prototype at Ross's event last year.
Exactly.
And we were speaking about this idea that not every single drum voice can be completely modulated to death, because it just wouldn't make any sense. Once you've got one or two things under quite a lot of modulation, you maybe want something that just stays static, like a hi-hat or something that just gives the rhythm something to work from. A good example of that for anyone listening is Detache's album, System, which I'll link after this has done being live. I spoke to him in an interview, and it's usually a clap on beats 2 and 4, which is super common for loads of genres of music. But he feels like that's enough to pin down whatever else he wants to do, however manic and Aphex Twin-like it wants to get. So, yeah, I like the fact it's not twice as big to get 12 CVs onto that thing.
Yeah.
Was it that you had Spooky Action, is it?
Yes, Spooky Action is this thing here. I mean, a lot of people thought the Superbooth, this is my bomb trigger. And I said, if this gets any louder, I'm going to blow up the place. No, so this is another standalone box because I showed it together. I showed it together with this module in a rack. And basically, this module is a clock generator. So it can generate and consume clocks. So there's a MIDI sync in and out. It has 6 outputs that you can put any clock on, like 1, like ×4, ×8, ×24. There's a reset. There's a start-stop gates, whatever you need for clocks in your rack. And at the same time, it has Wi-Fi, and it speaks the Ableton Link protocol. So basically, you can sync your rack to anything else that speaks Ableton Link. So Ableton itself on your PC. There's also Bitwig that implements this in Reason, and there's a ton of iPad and iOS synthesizer apps that also implement Ableton Link, because especially on iOS devices, it's a pain to get the clock in and out. You need all those dongles, and then you get MIDI or whatever. And over Wi-Fi, you can just set them up inside the same access point network, and then you can basically sync all this stuff together wirelessly.
Yeah.
And at the booth, I was demoing basically 2 of these devices, and one was changing the speed of the other.
And we should say, and people were quick to point it out, because there's one behind me here as well. The product of the show went to your patch notes.
Thank you.
Yeah, I don't know what to say about that, other than for anyone watching that didn't see it. It's a yellow sticky pad of Post-it notes on a blank panel.
Exactly.
I hope people went for it though, and I hope it worked putting it up on modular grid beforehand. But yeah,
I mean, this is basically it's like a business card and a giveaway. So.
Yeah,
I think Jason, you had
I mentioned some 1 HP spacers that had the website and contact email and the little graphic on the other side.
Yeah, you did as well, Morgan, right?
Yeah.
The little
tweak
thing. It's a more it's much nicer than a business card. Definitely. I'm thinking of creative ways of doing the business card thing. Have any of you seen the Analog Solutions cards from the late 90s?
No.
There's the System 100M ring modulator on a credit card sized business card. That is the circuit with the power header and everything on it. And they also did, I can't remember what it was. It might have been a slew circuit or something. But yeah, they were circuit boards, and everything was online if you wanted to go and build it. But yeah, we'll work down the line product-wise from Superbooth stuff. Morgan, you've mentioned a couple of yours already, but let's start with the left-right, mid-side, left-right, for anyone that doesn't know what it is. You can
it's a mid-side processor, so it's like a studio trick for processing stereo stuff. So you can oh look, there we go. Yeah, so there's left and right inputs at the top, and then mid and side outputs. That's like a sort of send and return loop kind of thing there, and then left right outputs at the end. But it means you can process stuff and of a stereo signal. If things are if they appear only on one side and not the other, then the side signal will process them more, and things that are panned more towards the center get processed more by the mid bit. You can also use it to kind of do some cool stereo tricks, like modulating the amounts of the mid and the side with like offset voltages and stuff. Yeah, it's fun.
Yeah, so I mean, a few tricks that, well, you told me about when I first saw the product. It means that you could effectively CV the stereo width, which I don't.
Yeah.
On that much stuff, or certainly up to the recent times it hasn't been. But you can also take, if you've got a stereo input, that single side output, which is a mono signal, put it into a mono spring reverb or delay or echophone or whatever, and bring it back, and it will decode that information back into stereo. So it's effectively buy any mono processor and have two, if you've got this at the side of it.
Yeah, there's kind of I don't know, there's kind of quirks with how it works. Like if you did that, like if you're processing the side signal and just say you had a, I don't know, just say you've got a drum bus going in and you've got your kick pan to the center, you process stuff on the side and then you get no kick in it.
Yeah.
So yeah. I don't know, it surprises me a lot of the time with, it's like, oh, okay, that did that. That's cool.
Yeah, that's a good point, actually. I maybe misrepresented that a little bit in that anything entirely mono will not come out of that side output. So
yeah,
you get a stereo version of your mono effect from a stereo input, but just the stereo information. But thinking of drums with a kick drum, you know, if you try to get some reverb on the top parts of a drum kit, you've probably not panned the kick anyway, and you probably don't want the kick
totally
going into your effects. So yeah.
And the other thing you can do is like cross patch it. Like if you take the mids end, which is actually just a mono sum of the left and the right, and then process that and then run it back into the side, like you can kind of break the rules a bit and get some cool effects from that.
It sounded crazy at audio rates as well in headphones.
Yeah.
Which was the demo you gave us at Superbooth. Really nuts, hearing like ring modding kind of stereo. You should mention Vector as well.
Yeah. That's my pretty module. That
let me pull an image up. There we go.
Yeah, I think I need to update that picture actually. LED colors are slightly different now. I think that's Anyway, it's the modulation matrix kind of thing with 3 inputs at the top there, and then 17 outputs, which are kind of based on the idea of moving a point around in a cube of 3D space. Yeah, it's a good way to get lots and lots of different CVs out of only 3 inputs.
Yeah, I think a common response to this one is it kind of builds on, is it the JAG from Molecular?
Yeah.
Or Grant Richter's JAG, joystick axis generator, I think. But yeah, a way of getting a ton of related modulation from only 3 inputs.
Yeah, I just bought a Jag recently because like I'd seen it and I liked the idea of it, but I had no idea how it worked. And someone was selling one locally, and so I bought it. And I'm like, I thought it would work like this, but it kind of works in different ways. So
okay.
Yeah, it's I'm like, oh, this is good. I haven't ripped it off too much because I didn't know what it really did.
Nice, it worked out that way.
Yeah.
I guess it could have gone the other way too, but yeah. Okay, and Andrew.
Yeah.
I'm just going to pull up Modular Grid. What would you like to start with? There's quite a range of stuff that you have.
Well, I'm not sure everything's up on Modular Grid, but there's the Bantam. That's probably the biggest thing. It's a semi-modular synth. Tried to kind of fit everything that you would need in basic analog synth in there. Yeah, that's roughly the final panel.
That's just a prototype.
Yeah. So yeah, you get 2 VCOs, a modulation oscillator that can be used as a third VCO. Your mixer section is where you can select your waveforms from the 2 VCOs. And then there's the 2 bottom mixer pots those are your auxiliary mixes. So you can mix in the modulator or an external input, and there's a secondary external input for the second one, or noise, or symmetry, which is just adding a DC offset into the mix, which is kind of cool for pushing the filter and the wave folder in different ways to get kind of a different sound.
Yeah.
The filter is, I'm not going to say it's a Polyvox clone because it doesn't use the same chips, but it's very similar to a Polyvox. It uses the same kind of technique that they use to do that. I added voltage controlled resonance to that. And then you get an ADSR. It's got 3 different modes and speed ranges, a voltage controlled slope, so function generator with independent shape controls for the rise and the fall. The VCA, it's a discrete VCA with it's got like a harmonic section where you could do overdrive, wave folding, and nuke, which is a combination of wave folding and overdriving. And then there's a voltage controlled delay and a sample and hold, and a MIDI to CV converter that allows you to do a monophonic or paraphonic mode on that.
Yeah. There's a ton of stuff on it. I think you're potentially going to do desktop version of this as well, right?
Yeah. You know, I really feel more so than we're going to sell them as Eurorack modules, but I feel it's much more suited to a desktop synth that you can use in a modular. You know, it's really designed to be used like any normal analog synth desktop unit or whatever. But we have all those patch points. So for when you want to expand out, we try to make it as modular as possible where you can really patch things out in creative ways. So you don't have to really stick to the normalized wiring that's under the panel.
Yeah. I think anything like that's great, just either as a kind of starting point for people or as an expansion for people already into it. When they've got a few modules and it's kind of, I'd love to have another voice. And it's like, well, there you go. Or it's a starting point for people to kind of build from. But you also embrace stereo quite a lot with some of your modules as well.
Yeah. You know, a lot of modules are dual, but it'd be really great for them to be dual and also stereo. So that's what I did with the new VCA that's coming out and the filter. So you basically have 2 sets of filters that you can use independently or together. And you have stereo controls to control both sides at the same time. I feel like that really kind of gives more versatility to a stereo design.
Yeah, me too. There was a lot of dual filters for a while, it seemed, in the format, but then none that just had one cutoff that you could sweep. And you can split signals and make something dual work in stereo. But I liked it when, I think Happy Nerding was potentially the first to do a stereo filter that was just one set of controls, couldn't be used as a dual filter at all. I know yours is a bit more flexible. But it was just, this is a stereo filter. It takes 2 ins, you've got 2 outs, and that's it. There was no idea of controlling width, but I find that's great for running over like a drum bus, almost like a DJ mixer. And then the WMD overseer took that, like, we'll have a DJ channel strip on and on. It's nice to see stereo being embraced generally, I think.
Yeah, I think it's users are definitely looking for more stereo stuff. But like I said, it's not just about stereo. It's kind of about more control and having it be used whether for stereo or 2 different signals or one signal that you want to create a stereo image out of. Yeah,
the AGH Gemini has a kind of mid-control bus section as well, which is not exactly what you're doing at all, but a similar vein of having some more flexibility, but options to do it in stereo and manipulate both sides in more interesting ways.
Yeah.
You've also got the Through Zero oscillator coming as well.
Yep. So that's almost ready to go into production. It's a bit different than your standard Through Zero oscillator. It can do a lot of the same things that you'd expect from a 3-0 oscillator, but it's got a little bit different functionalities. You could see the 0 point is essentially changes the level in which the oscillator reverses to when you're modulating at audio rates, and you either turn the 0 point knob or modulate it, you get different harmonics out of the sound, which is really interesting. One thing that people like to do with 3-0 oscillators is create bell sounds, and so they use dynamic depth modulation. But one of the pitfalls of the analog versions is that you get that DC offset. So, some people ask why I didn't include that in the module, and I kind of feel like there's plenty of VCAs you could do that. But I think what's even cooler is that if you modulate the 0 point, you get a change in the harmonics, and you don't get any DC offset. So like weird, frequency artifacts happening. So it's a little bit different in that sense.
Yeah, there's a good question come up to you about Bantam, Andrew, but everyone in general. It's an interesting point. DB Paulon in the chat says, not trying to be trite or anything, so it's not a loaded comment, that he's just generally curious. What's the goal of putting a semi-modular synth inside a modular rack? Is it just normalization advantages, which it wouldn't potentially be the normalization, because whether it's a desktop or not, it doesn't matter whether it's in a rack for that to be the point. Just to mention before any of us kind of come in on that, Dualtrix or Dualatrix, apologies if I've said that wrong, just said, the idea that it's all in one case, it's everything you need. When you want to expand it and add another module next to it, it's all there.
Right.
That's kind of my take on that. Any of the semi-modular stuff is the fact that I can have a slightly bigger case and put another VCO in or another effect or
it's
one thing to plug in.
The fact that it's semi-modular is more of a convenience. I think a big problem when a new user gets into modular is that they'll buy VCO, they'll buy VCF and VCA and an envelope, but then they're like, oh, I have to patch this just to get like a simple voice, and most people are accustomed to using a keyboard synth and all that stuff's kind of done for you. So it's really a convenience, and like I had said earlier, that I've tried very hard to make everything still modular as if they were their own modules. They have the different patch points that you'd expect to get out of all those modules if they were single units.
Yeah. Well, there's a ton of patch points on it. It's not just a synth with, a handful of patch points.
Right.
And the extra utility stuff, like you said, there's sample and hold in there that's separate to the LFO, which is often, at least on a more vintage kind of synth voice, there often is the LFO has a random wave shape. It's not a separate thing a lot of the time.
Right. You can patch in an external clock. You can patch in an external sample. It's just meant to give you the functionality you'd expect out of a whole array of modules, but in just one unit.
Yeah. Dualtrix told me how to say his name properly as well. Apologies for saying it wrong. Mentioned it's potentially cheaper as well if you can put it in a rack than having to buy a case and a power supply, and
right.
I think potentially fair from a user point of view. I don't know if anyone else has a kind of general comment on semi-modular voices in or out of a rack.
I think it suits a lot of different people's use cases. Like it's excellent for people that are new to Eurorack. It's a good way to get, as you said, a good collection of modules without having to cherry pick, an oscillator, filter, VCA, and then have to patch that. So it's a good way to get the critical mass that you need for a synth voice in one go, and then expand from there.
An entry drug was
it's
that?
An entry drug to get the people hooked, and then they can discard it later and go full modular. But we have to lure them in somehow.
I think the idea of getting rid of it though comes down to how well it integrates. I think some of the more basic semi-modular stuff, which regardless of you being here or not, Andrew, I'm not one to just pander to people because they're in front of me, but this will integrate way more than a lot of other semi-modulars. I said the same thing about the Behringer Neutron, which has a ton of patch points. When someone said, "What, I'm going to buy a synth this summer, I really don't know what I'm doing, but I want to kind of get into stuff." It's like, well, there's enough there to grow from. You know, if it's just got pitch and a gate and like a CV for the filter, you might disregard it, I think, for most people. I think when it really does integrate well, I wouldn't disregard it. But yeah, each to their own on that one. Another question as well, while we're on that one, Andrew, what's the size of Bantam?
It's 60 HP. So
Okay.
it's essentially the size of, well, it is the size of the Mother 32. So one thing that I'm working on is a case that will fit on the tier racks for the Mother and the DFAM. So I think that for people who have those systems, which I think a lot of new Eurorack users do, it'll add a lot of cool functionality to that kind of a system. So we want to make it portable, we want to make it to kind of fit within something else like that system. It will have its own power. So yeah.
Yeah. I think it's that perfect, like Brad said, it's that perfect gateway drug thing. You know, there's a ton of people interested. I keep saying modular curious, and that I need to put on a t-shirt. I've seen more people say modular curious lately. And there's a ton of people curious, but not quite ready to dip their toes just yet.
Yeah.
So yeah. I know there's a few other things. We might come back to some of those as well. But Joran, you had a couple of new things as well, right?
Yeah, I had Filter 8, which is basically the big new one. So yeah, it's like, you know, I'm looking for analog circuits which are the new analog stuff, or I'm looking at what already exists in analog and just doing things a bit differently, finding new techniques. So Filter 8 is basically it's a 4-pole filter. Like we have quite a few of those in Eurorack, cascaded VPA. But then there are some which have pole mixing. There are some which have eight phase outputs. There are, I think, only one which has linear FM. So there are like features spread around, and I decided to just make a module which has everything. So it's basically the filter which has all the features you might want, or I think people will want. So it's got coarse and fine tuning. You've got a low audio range, so it can be a slew limiter or an LFO. It has some nice resonance. It's a new kind of resonance topology where you don't lose any low ends. So that's quite unique. It's got the exponential FM, temperature compensated, fault productive tracking, linear FM with an AC switch, voltage controlled resonance, of course. You've got 4-pole outputs. There's a high pass, a bump boost plus notch, which is quite a special response. Phase shifter, 4-pole bump pass, a hold, which can be, so when you use it in self oscillation, you can engage the hold and then the filter gets slowed down all the way. If it's working as an LFO, so that's low frequency self oscillation, you can use that to halt modulation and then restart it. The hold is also gate controlled, so at audio rates you can, it's like a sync almost. Dedicated ping inputs, so yeah, lots of stuff in 12 HP.
Yeah, and I've been testing this one, and it's not cramped. Like you said, it's got everything in it in 12 HP you might want. When people kind of tell me that before I've seen it, I do sometimes worry that it's either going to be massive and then no one will buy it because it's 50 HP and it's just a filter, or I'm not going to be able to use it. And it's obviously neither of those things at all.
Yeah, that's really, really important. And I'm super conscious when I'm designing stuff. I also have, like, there are performing artists which use my modules, and I'm really work closely with them. So to make sure the modules can be used in a live setting, which means not just ergonomics, but also visual feedback with the LEDs, putting sockets in logical places, things like that. So yeah, and you see that across all my modules basically. That's a real focus. A compact size, but still good ergonomics and good layouts.
Well, we saw it with when you say looking at kind of new analog. You had the Compare 2 module was the first thing that I checked out. I'll just pull that up, which was a seemingly basic concept that actually does a ton of different things.
Yeah.
I think a lot of users might not have realized. I certainly didn't at first when I first saw it. Really pushed the idea of just a dual comparator to kind of another level, really. And I think the filter does as well. But still simple to use. And I like that the potential complexity of this stuff is in the patching.
Yeah, absolutely. So, yeah, there are also like some manufacturers, and I mean, there's nothing wrong with that. Everyone has their own style, but I prefer to make modules which are really clean and precise, and like they don't really have a character of their own, really controllable, but you can make it do what you want with the modulation, basically. So lots of modulation possibilities, and then you can bring out the character yourself. That's kind of the goal.
I think the newer mutable instrument stuff went that way as well. Stages, the 6 feels like it's all in the patching. It's like infinitely complex, but really basic at the same time.
You know, it's funny you say that, because I had like something in mind, like stages, a year or so ago, and I never went through it with the design. But yeah, it's like, you know, I can see you had some of the same thought patterns as I had at the time, but it's implemented digitally, which has some advantages. Like my version would have been a lot more complex to control, because you're always you're constricted by what you can do with an analog interface, analog user interface.
Yeah. Just to bring it back to the live chat, Jill Trax asked, what's the price on Bantam going to be, Andrew? Do you know yet?
I don't have an absolute price, but we're thinking that for like the desktop unit with the case would probably be close to $700, maybe like $600-700. So trying to make it affordable. Yeah.
Another one for you, Andrew, just looking through the live chat. Will there be any SSF entity standalone products?
I am definitely, I'm in the thinking about it stage. I'd really like to make a drum machine with a sequencer built into it, kind of like a 909 kind of thing, but based on the entity designs. So yes, I would really love to do that. No, I don't have anything designed yet, but you know, I do have the entities to design off of. So in that sense, yeah, I mean, if you're asking like a kind of like a Joe Mox thing, like a little desktop bass drum, maybe. It depends if people are interested. It's kind of hard to gauge that kind of thing for me. Yeah.
And I think the idea of, I think drum machines are potentially on a bit of a comeback, if they ever went away for a while. Don't know how people feel about that generally, but not a clone would be, which none of you have done. So I'm kind of preaching to the converted, I guess. But I know Behringer did the 808 clone, which, you know, that's a whole topic. But
it wouldn't be a clone.
No. They would be it would be an entity drum machine, which is way more exciting than here's another 909 or
boring.
Yeah. That's kind of my take on it.
Is it going to have MIDI?
Does what?
It should.
Because then I can plug another of my module, which is the Trick 31, which is basically 8 Eurorack triggers going in and MIDI going out, which is
awesome.
very useful. Which is very useful with all of your old drum machines that you still have sitting in the basement.
Well, now it's 20% off.
Yeah, well, there's a PME for math.
The other thing I wanted to mention with the your analog stuff as well, Select 2, which is seemingly like Compare 2 in that it kind of looks basic. It kind of looks like, you know, people may potentially look and go, you know, maybe not, but then they're not going to quite realize what it does. Let me pull an image up. So what's Select 2 for anyone that hasn't seen it?
Yeah, so basically I'm working towards making a system of modules which allows you to explore new kinds of analog synthesis. And in any system, you need some utility stuff. So you need some attenuators, attenuverters. You need to be able to offset things, gated switching. You need to have sample and hold, track and hold. And Select 2 is basically all of that in 6 HP. So you've got the 2 signal inputs you can select between with select gate inputs. I call it a gated CV processor. So it's aimed at processing CV signals, but it's also great for audio use under gate control, so under gate modulation. So you have a select gate to select between 2 inputs. You have a hold gate to hold the signal, so that's a track and hold feature. And you have a unity gate, and this can basically it just leaves the signal unity gate, so you can have a gated attenuator or a gated inverter. You have 2 of those, they're mixed together by default with normalization top to bottom. So you can do offsetting, mixing, like, yeah, lots of useful little possibilities. And of course you can do everything at the same time. So if you want to do some mangle, some LFOs or whatever, it's also great for that.
Yeah, cool. Definitely looking forward to kind of delving into that one a bit more myself. And Jason, again, you had a lot of stuff this year.
Yeah.
We'll start with, I guess, the CSL is probably the logical place to start.
This guy here.
Are you calling it dual oscillator, complex oscillator?
Complex oscillator, I think. That's the CSL. The naming is actually it came from an email I received a while back. Someone had clearly emailed me from their car with voice to text, so it read out, "This sauce later rocks," which took me a while to figure out they were trying to say this, complimenting me on one of my previous oscillators. So that sauce later, I'll keep that for a future design.
Someone here definitely needs to make the sauce later. But yeah, there we go. So there's a few kind of new takes on the dual complex oscillator thing.
Yeah.
I guess go through what's kind of different for people, and if people want to look at Buchla 259 or anything that came after that, they can go for it. But yeah, what's kind of different? What's your take on it?
Yeah, so this one, both oscillators are fundamentally different cores. The top one's a sawtooth core, so that's kind of the lineage of my Troika and Tona designs, and then the lower one's a triangle core, which I figured just go for best of both worlds. And each one's got a wavefolder and timbre section built in. That photo's actually a little bit old. There's supposed to be little squiggly lines beside the center attenuverters, because they're the symmetry offset for the wavefolders.
Yeah.
So I tried to make it as powerful as it can be for use as just 2 independent oscillators with a good range of waveform outputs. And then for cross modulation, there's a single index control bus, and then the 2 sine waves from each oscillator go to internal VCAs that are then controlled from that single control point, and they can be routed to I think it's 4 different destinations per oscillator. So it can be to the FM inputs, the symmetry, the wavefold depth, and the PWM, which can all be assigned simultaneously or individually.
Yeah. What's and this is on the TSL as well, which I'll pull an image of.
Yeah.
The waveform that kind of looks like a downsampled sine.
Yeah, yeah. So that's like two comparators over the triangle. So as the gain is increased, as the PWM signal is, I think I've got it going counterclockwise. It will the top peaks will spread out, and you'll get closer to a regular square wave. And then as it comes, as you turn it clockwise, they'll reduce into smaller peaks on the top and bottom. It's just it's an interesting timbre. It's a lot more subtle, I find, than the just a traditional like duty cycle PWM. It's a bit softer. It's really nice for just adding in as a base layer in a patch. Like I'll use it when I'm using the harmony. I'll sometimes use this as my root voice. Just have a slow LFO, just modulating that, and it's just a really nice thick bed to have at the bottom of a chord voicing.
Yeah, it's almost like the difference between the shark tooth and the saw wave on a Model D.
Yeah.
It's just that bit kind of smoother. So yeah, I get what you mean. It's also like when you run sequences at audio rate and kind of draw the waveforms with the voltages on the step.
Yeah.
You kind of try and draw a triangle. You're going to get that same kind of step pyramid.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Kind of vibe, which is a different sound to just a hard kind of binary square or pulse. We should also mention the other oscillators as well.
Yeah.
Sure, we could go on CSL for a while because you've packed a ton of stuff in.
Yeah, I mean, I just today finished off a video that I shot this morning, me going through the CSL in a bit of depth. I think it's ended up clocking in at about 40 minutes long. So a ton of sound examples. So it's up on my YouTube channel as of like a couple of hours ago, I think.
Okay, cool. So that'll be a case of if I do anything with it, it'll be like a 2-hour video, and I'll have to index the thing, and it'll take me an hour just to write out the timing index. And then I'll get people moaning that it's so long. But it generally doesn't go that way. I get to a point making videos where once I get past the 10-minute mark, and then when I get past 20, I start to get anxious that no one's going to care.
Yeah.
Tends to go the other way. As long as I give people an index so that they can go, I don't want to listen to you for 50 minutes, but they do want to know what this one mode sounds like or what this one thing sounds like.
Yeah. Yeah, I need to put some time codes into a comment or into the description for that still.
Yeah, just so people can see where things happen. I think that's the way to do it. I'm not so into breaking videos up. I have done that a little bit, but I know for my watching, and YouTube keeps where you got to in any video anyway, as long as you're logged in. I'd rather that than like a 15-part series where they're all 5-minute videos or 2-minute videos. But anyway. One thing I will ask, it was Benjamin Welch, I think, that asked it. Any update on the Symphonion?
The Symphonion, yes, it's getting close. So I've been apologies to anyone that's listening that has emailed me. You're in a waiting list. I've got everything's compiled. I'm tracking everything by date. So I've just been hesitant to send out any update emails because I don't want to get to a point and then find there's something, I can't source enough displays or there's some bug that we need to iron out. So I want to make sure everything's watertight before it ships. But we're very close. I'm going to be starting to assemble the first small batches by hand in the coming weeks, and I need to buy a lot more buttons.
Yeah, buttons.
You do it. Just a general question for anyone, and I think a few years ago, one company I won't name who bought up all of the pots or something that were at Mouser or Taylor. Or how often do you get kind of thrown by that? There were thousands of pots at the component supplier, and I now can't buy any. There's a massive.
It's really bad right now, actually.
Yeah.
Is it?
There's a shortage of even just the simple passive parts. I don't know if it's the weather in Taiwan or but yeah, it's kind of a crisis.
Yeah, it's economics basically. They're not making any money on the like larger sizes. There's so much competition that the manufacturers are all saying like screw this. We're just focusing on really small sizes or specialized automotive stuff, but it can actually make some money. So now the bigger size, like 06, 03 or 08, 05, or nobody wants to make them because they don't make any money on them.
Right.
And that has been going on for, I think, at least a year, and it's going to last at least another year. So, and I mean, I don't think like Eurorack has really been affected by it yet. I haven't been. I've had some other shortages, but not passives. Yeah, it is a big deal. And everyone at the factory where I assemble my stuff are running a little. they're going a little bit crazy right now.
Well, it kind of makes sense with the surface mount design and technology stuff that, you know, general industry, not Eurorack, is just going to push for the smaller and smaller stuff, which isn't necessarily what we want, I guess. Circuit design's far from my thing.
Yeah, I thought I struck gold the other week. The last Mauser order, I had to restock on 100 nano bypass caps.
They're gone.
Thought I found them in stock, bought a reel of 2000. It's 0201, which I can't do anything with. So.
You can just sprinkle them across the board and hope
it lands in the right place.
There's a couple of questions about your other oscillators as well, Jason. So Dissonant asked about the TSL and what the core is. That's triangle core.
Yep, it's triangle core.
Just to go through that as well, because that's a new thing.
Yeah.
Grab a picture.
Need to update the picture for that one as well.
Yeah, so you've got the wavefold output. The PWM does the dual comparator thing you mentioned, the kind of pyramid waveform. The square's a sub, which is nice. There's no saw or ramp. I guess that's the only kind of omission of general features, but there's a ton of stuff on there that I've not felt like I've missed it. I find I go to saws and ramps really lazily, just the default kind of thing. I almost neglect square waves. So
I was because this was kind of it came out of an experiment. We like trying out some triangle core circuits. So I did get the triangle to fold to a sawtooth, but I always had a little spike in the middle. So I figured I've got sawtooth core oscillators already, so I'll just focus on what else I can do with the triangle and see how small I could fit it. So it's fiddly. Like if you got multiple jacks patched into the three center outputs, then it gets a bit crammed. But
but I mean,
it's a fun one.
If people feel it's cramped, you have got toner, which is saw core.
Yeah, it's sawtooth core.
The wavefold is much softer.
Yep.
On this one, but all the waves broken out, and I kind of like mixing the two. Someone was telling me the other day that I've got to get a handful of the TSL oscillators, and I said consider getting maybe a couple of each, or one toner and a couple of TSLs, or
one toner and a TSL. That's fundamentally you've got the same thing that's included in the CSL, but without the modulation bus, and the wavefolders are a little bit more powerful in the CSL, I think. But yeah, like between those two oscillators alone, you can get lost. It's a lot of fun. I find like playing with the TSL in just having it pitched all the way down and using it as a modulation source, especially the split, like the PWM voice. If you have that on the split triangle wave ramp, just having that patched into linear FM and the wavefolder, you get some really interesting, like just sort of like chugging texture. Yeah.
And then there's this thing. I don't know if there's any update from Superbooth, which was a kind of platform of potential, I guess.
Yeah. So I've got a few friends that occasionally hit me up, like saying, I need a module that does this, which that's where the original performance quantizer, one of the older quantizers that I did, that had a MIDI input. It's for a friend of mine that wanted, I think he plays with like a Nord lead as his main instrument, and then expands upon that with a small modular system, things like that. So he wanted the way to control his quantizer with MIDI. So we just bounced some ideas around, and I thought, I had the means to cut faceplates in house. It's it's a bit temperamental now, but I had a CNC machine that I'd used to cut prototype faceplates. So I did some custom builds like that. The Neonic is sort of an expansion on that sort of custom shop idea, where this was a bit of an experiment. He was my friend was asked after just a collection of faders, manual faders, to control the what's the orthogonal devices sampler, the
301.
That's one, yeah. So I think it's got a ton of parameters, but I think they're all like CV input. I think it's quite sparse for actual physical knobs and stuff.
Yeah.
So this was his request, so you could get some hands-on control onto the parameters. And I just sort of added a few things that I thought I would try out and see if it worked. So each fader's got an input and an output. You patch any signal into the input. You can then attenuate it with the fader. There's a slew limiter, so if you're using that to scale CV or sequences, you can add slew to that individually. Then there's a mix output, so you can mute or unmute certain channels to then sum together there. So you can use that as a basic DC mixer or audio mixer. So you could group like 3 or 4 channels, use them as a mixer, while you've got the other ones used, for use as just physical controls. It's become a must-have in my testing rig, because a lot of time I just need to test certain CVs, so it's a really hands-on way to experiment with things.
It's a bit like stages then.
Yeah.
Stages. Yeah, I guess at the minute there's definitely a slight overlap feature. But
yeah, I'm not sure of the future of this module. I've been getting a lot of there's a lot of interest and a lot of people inquiring about it, but it needs at least a couple of hardware revisions until I'll be happy with the the full functionality set. And like there's some fun circuit bends on the back to get it functional.
Yeah, stages won't pass audio well because there's no actual input. There's CV input over whatever that slider's doing in whatever mode, but I'm not expecting everyone here or everyone watching to watch that video, because that was like an hour and 5 minutes long. But when you put audio in the CV in stages, you get a real kind of, it's not quite downsampling, but a real degraded kind of sound, which can be cool for some things, but it definitely I wouldn't say it passed audio well, generally. So I guess a little bit of overlap, but some different things.
Yeah.
Just a quick question for you, Jason. Dissonant said, will the TSL go down to LFO rates?
Yeah, I can't remember the lowest frequency off the top of my head that, when you just turn the pots all the way down, but if you send it a negative DC offset to the FM input or the volt-per-octave input, it will go right down to stalling and then start back up as soon as you bring it back up. So it works very well in LFO ranges.
And then a question for the, is it Neonic?
Neonic, yeah.
Gaelic, right?
Yeah. So it actually translates to weird or strange. So this is the strange module. I've got a few random prototypes. I'm thinking to just name Neonic, so there'll just be a collection of random faceplates that don't necessarily have any relation to each other, but they're all Neonic.
Jen's in the chat says, does the mix output break when you take its physical output?
Break when you take its physical output?
So how some normalized devices, everything will run through until you patch a jack in, and then
I see. No, the signals that mix, I've basically got multiple branches from each of the it'll be the output of the slew limiter. So any audio going through, if you've got slew again, it'll just pass through, and then that's being split to 2 destinations. One's a set of ADCs on a microcontroller. So if you're using it with CV, then it's got potential for recording sequences or running as a sequencer. But then the audio is branched off through digital control switches. So it's all analog signal path, and they just sum together. So if you patch signals in, you need to actively unmute certain channels to mix together.
Yeah, that's actually a set thing. It's not a case of doing it by the patching.
Yeah.
I have a couple of general questions for everyone. User-friendly music asked quite a while ago, actually, and I just made note of it. Not related to any current topics or any one of us here specifically, but he'd love to hear all of our thoughts on the Moog Grandmother. Seeing as you burst out in laughter first, Vlad, fire away.
Well, As I just came back from 2 days of Modular and Synth Freaks meeting, of course, this question also came up, and of course, it was a very polarized thing. A couple of people basically hating it, hating the colors. Other people loving it and saying for 900 it's a no-brainer. My take on it, it's a 70s synthesizer done with modern production methods. So because the PCB is all SMD, but everything else, I mean, the actual design of it and also the physical design and the colors is basically, it's a 70s product. And for that part, I love it. I love their boldness to do that, to basically create something in the style of the past. In terms of sounds, I'm the wrong guy to ask because I'm more a technician than a musician. I watched some of the videos and it does synthy sounds. Sorry if I'm ignorant. But I'm not immediately hating it. I love the little red square on the bottom right. Actually, we had it. Actually, we made up grandmother and the little red reverb. Instead of the little red riding hood, it was the little red reverb pot. So yeah, so I actually like it.
Yeah, I think it's definitely polarizing. It sounds like, to me from the videos, an old vintage Moog, which I don't think they've sounded like for a long time to my ears. Sub fatties, slim fatties, sub 37s. You know, I've keys players in bands and things. I know that they love taking them out on the road or a rack with the slim fatties in and a MIDI keyboard, but they definitely don't sound the same. And I think people, I'm not saying Moog sold synths this way, but I think people felt like that if they bought a little fatty, they were getting kind of a Model D or a piece of that history sonically. And I don't think that was the case at all. Not that they're bad products by any stretch of the imagination, but this does sound like older Moogs that I've heard. There's a Moog Rogue demo on YouTube that sounds really close, which I think circuit-wise is quite different, and that's not that old of a product either. But yeah, what's anyone else's take on it?
I reckon it's awesome that it's got a spring reverb in there. Like, when was the last time somebody put a spring reverb in a standalone synth? Like 2600 or something?
Yes, a long time.
Yeah.
So that. Yeah, it sounds great as well in their video with a reverb on there. I don't know how kind of big the tank is or not. I remember getting into spring reverb and I guess stupidly thinking that the bigger the tank, the longer the reverb. And that's just not the case at all. I remember I got the dope for A199 or whatever, which has this tiny little kind of 10 centimeter thing. And then I'd heard one of these as well, just because it's to hand, the Ekdal moisturizer, which does a few other things. But I thought I'll get like a big 19-inch tank, and that's going to be this long, cavernous thing. And no, it's not at all. There's a ton of other stuff going on, it being a physical, mechanical thing. But yeah, I don't know. What about you, Andrew? What's your take on it?
I think that it does fit like the aesthetic of a grandmother, you know, something from the 70s. So on that level, I think that they kind of nailed it. You know, I get how people are saying it's ugly, I hate it, but it's kind of cool that, you know, it does sound like the older Moogs, and it kind of has a neat look. I don't know if I would pick those colors, but I like what they're trying to do, and I think it's kind of cool.
I think that's it. You know, whether I actually like it or not is kind of irrelevant. I like that they've done it, maybe more than I feel like it's for me. But don't know. What about you, Yoran?
I don't really have an opinion on the thing, you know. I mean, yeah, it's just nice to see Moog still doing new stuff, trying new stuff. I'm not sure about the look, but yeah, I mean that's pretty irrelevant. I think some people will like it, some don't. Yeah, But I would like to mention one thing about the spring reverb. I don't know if any of you have yet, but the new music thing, Spring Reverb, has a feedback, and that's really nice because I think I have it hooked up to the smallest Belton tank. But if you add some feedback to it, it can make it sound really big.
Yeah.
I have no idea what they're doing in the grandmother. I have no idea what kind of tank is in there, but you can do a lot of interesting things with Spring Reverb. So yeah, that's.
I wonder if, thinking of the grandmother, if it has a headphone out, so you can do the kind of 101 or SH09 or SH2, you know, there's plenty of sims that do it. Patch the headphone out to an external in to create that feedback loop. So you might be able to do that with the spring in as part of that patch. That could be interesting. What about you, Jason? Your take on it?
I think it looks great. I think it's, you know, I come from more of a music background before getting into, you know, into synth design. So I think, you know, guitar players are like the typical one where everyone has their own opinion of what looks good versus what sounds good. You know, it's, you know, the link between a good singer instrument and something that you like the look of, that you want to sit down and play. I mean, the grandmother, it looks like a synth that, you know, someone that's not necessarily into modular would go down. You know, the same reason that Moog instruments became the go-to synthesizer. You know, they became the definition of what people thought a synthesizer was, and because it had a black and white keyboard on it, so musicians can just start playing on it and start to learn it, not necessarily from the synthesis side of things, but just incorporate it into their workflow as musicians. I think it's got that retro look, and if, you know, modern manufacturing technologies, it should be very reliable. So it's I think it's a win on a lot of fronts.
Yeah, I think it'll do well for them, and I'd like the general direction. One, I guess, a good kind of closing question, unless anyone wants to ask anything else in the live chat, kind of final warning.
Can I just say one more thing about the grandmother?
Yeah.
I think it's cool because it's like an axe. Like, it's the kind of, you know, it's like a giggable synth. But it only goes down to F, the keys. Like, that needs to go down to E, so you can play that in a band.
That's a good point. E and F is apparently the magic number for PA systems in terms of how low, the lowest notes they can reproduce. There was a shift as PA system technology changed, especially in drum and bass and jungle, where everything shifted down to being in E or F or G. And a lot of producers will talk about, you know, you go to E flat or D as the key and it just cannot reproduce well. Apparently E is the magic lowest you can go for sub bass on any kind of live. I mean, anyone interested can Google it. It's some people talk about going up to the key of G so it feels light and airy, and then dropping down to E in their sets again to really kind of push the sub any lower and it won't translate, apparently. But yeah, I guess F's kind of a weird choice. Yeah, thinking of it being a band instrument. Yeah, that kind of is odd. I guess you just have to octave shift lower and play higher up and lose a bit of the range of the keyboard. But yeah, general closing question, unless anything else comes in. And I can imagine what a lot of you are going to say because you've been tied to your booths at Superbooth for so long. Jill Trax asked, what was your favourite new product from Superbooth that wasn't your own? We'll go the other way down the line this time. Jason, what about you? Don't have to be a single thing. Did you get a chance to actually look at anything?
Not too much. Anytime I got away from my booth, I was just going around to catch up and say hi and talk as little about modules as possible. Yeah, I'm still finding out what is new from Superbooth, but at this stage, like just going through the forums and seeing what's new. I mean, you know, a lot of what you guys have been showing. You know, I caught glimpses of faceplates, but this has been me seeing what's new so far from Superbooth.
Yeah, fair. It takes a while to digest, I think. Certainly, I can't speak for Superbooth because I've been to them, but when NAMM happens, it takes me like 3-4 weeks to actually realize what's just gone on. as someone that wasn't at the event. It takes me a while to catch up, and I imagine you were there, but you feel the same because.
Yeah. So apologies for the terrible answer.
Joram, do you get to check out anything else?
Yeah, I mean, I can show you. It's this one by Vladimir.
Nice little bit of a.
I have no idea how I survived without this. For like prototyping, I mean, yeah. So T43 for me.
Very nice.
Thank you.
Andrew, did you get to check anything else out?
Not really, which is usually the case. Typically, when I do these shows, I'm one of those people who's by myself. I did have a friend who was there for a little while, but it's really just kind of overwhelming. I'm really there to show my products, and I see other people's stuff and it looks cool, but I never really get to like play with anything. It's definitely a lot different than when I was just a user. It's just there's so much stuff. So yeah,
that's fair enough. I feel like the same thing because selfishly for me, it's great to just be able to chat to you a bit, all of you, just a bit more freely tonight with no agenda. Because I come round and I have Greg and Matthew that I do the modular podcast stuff with, and it's like, oh yeah, great to meet you. For you, Andrew, it's the first time we'd met before. Can I film this thing? And then we film it, and I almost feel rude because it's like all right, yeah, thanks, see you later. I might bump into you later on, and then you move on to the next booth, and it's such a whirlwind of. I've had to watch some of my own stuff back, and I intend on watching other people's stuff back to see if I know Ed at Sonic State quite well, and I know he asks quite different questions to me generally. So I quite like watching Ed's stuff because I feel like I'm getting a bit of a separate kind of view take than I did. So it's still kind of a blur to me, and I did get round, I think 60 people, 61 videos we did this time. So, but there's 250 exhibitors, I think. Which is pretty crazy. And every time I'd be moving around, someone would bump into me, just a friend from UK that maybe comes to the events that I put on. And they'd be, oh man, you've got to go check this out at this booth. And they'd give me the booth number. They'd be like, they're at WS 09A or whatever. And I'm like, I have no idea where any of that is. I'm just walking around, like there's the basketball hall that's new. There's the main bit as you come in, and there's upstairs. And that's kind of as far as my organising went. What about you, Morgan? Did you get to check anything out?
I was by myself, so I didn't get to check out that much stuff. But not to suck up, but I think Andrew's stereo stuff was possibly the highlight for me. Because it's yeah, I think there really should be more stereo things going on, and I'm like, oh good, somebody else thinks that.
Yeah, cool. And you, Vlad, did you get to check anything out?
Well, I didn't, as I was again at my booth most of the time on my own. I didn't. But actually, even the last Superbooth where I was mobile and walking around all the time, I actually also didn't check out many modules. As I spent 3 days talking to people and chatting and checking out the performance and everything else. And then I used the 2 weeks after Superbooth to just look at all of your videos to find out what was new. If there was a module that was basically my favorite, it was not even on Superbooth. It was actually mutable stages, for the simple fact that it is such a simple concept. And once I saw it, it was like, oh my God, of course.
Yeah.
And it came out a short while after Plates. And Plates, I mean, Plates is lovely. I mean, it's I have one. It's pure Olivier coding and everything, lovely sounds. But Stages, when it came out, it was just such a basic concept. Just make 6 of the same and combine them. So this is kind of my, even though Mutable wasn't a Superbooth, it's kind of my favorite module because it's so simple. You can explain it to people in a few words, and then I guess it has so many possibilities.
Yeah, it's one of those that it's almost like Stages to me kind of felt like a new Surge dual universal slope generator in that obviously that's what Maths is, that's what Rampage is, that's what loads of other two-stage envelopes are based on, just function generators. But it can be a filter or a slew or an LFO or an oscillator or a triggered envelope or a gated envelope. And Stages kind of did the same thing in that the interface is really simple, but it's kind of infinitely complex. I managed to get it to do some odd sidechain compression stuff with the audio degradation that you get because it won't do audio properly. And It kind of did that. I don't know if anyone remembers Satisfaction by Benny Benassi. It was like a big dance track, big pumping sidechain, terrible video, you know, women in bikinis with building equipment or whatever was in the video. But it did that kind of bass sound. And it was like, this is weird for Stages, but this is kind of cool. But yeah, I don't think we'll ever see Olivier at an event. I've had a few messages before from a couple of people watching actually that said, you know, do you know if Olivier is coming this year? Because I haven't seen his name announced. I don't think he's into it, is my take on it. Yeah, I'm sure he gets asked, but yeah.
If I recall correctly, he was going to be there last year, but he was sick. So he couldn't make it. But he sent a case to show stuff, but it didn't arrive. I mean, that's if I recall correctly.
Yeah, I think that was the story that was given. I wasn't quite sure how much I believed all that. I mean, if you said he was ill, but Olivier is a really great person to talk to and work with from my point. So, you know, if you told me he was ill, I'd believe that he was ill. But yeah, the kind of was going to go, not going to go. I imagine Andreas Schneider really pushed him to come and tried to convince him and kind of half didn't, I don't know. But yeah, let's have a kind of last call for questions from anyone in the live chat. Any kind of closing messages from anyone? I'll pull up the pictures you sent me, Vlad, from Happy Nobbing in random place in Germany where no one knows there's all these synths. Let's have a bit of a look at the gear while we kind of close out. Yeah, anything anyone wants to kind of finish on?
I guess not.
No, I'll take that as a no. I'll plug Modular Meets Leeds. The kind of main event I hold each year is the 11th and 12th of August this year. Last year we extended it out to 2 days. So we had the kind of main meet on the Saturday. Users can come. Everything's free. Manufacturers are there as well. Jason was there last year. Will be again this year. Some talks, stuff on expanding sequences and synthesis techniques with Rob Hordijk. Future Sound Systems presented the Grisalizer stuff. There's some performances to break the day up. We kind of did a live 3-module challenge kind of thing on the Sunday. We're looking at potentially doing some sort of DIY workshop thing, but someone else will be dealing with that, not me, so I can't say too much. So yeah, a great venue, good food on site, good coffee, good beer. You can come and listen to people with accents similar to mine because it's really close. So if that's your thing, it's come along. But yeah, cool. Well, thanks for everyone for joining us. I still feel like I'm kind of unwinding after Superbooth, and I barely had any traveling or anything to do. But there are 61 videos up from Superbooth already for anyone watching. Feels like they want to watch some stuff. I'll put that in the description. Bit of a late question. Hang on, what's this one? I've missed it. If I've missed a question, like, you've got 30 seconds before I hit end. Where's the best place for everyone to find you? That's always a nice thing to end on. Vlad, is it vpme.de?
vpme.de. I'm also on Facebook. I mean, the company's on Facebook. I'm on Facebook. I'm also AV500 on Muffs in the DIY section because some of my stuff is from DIY. Yeah, but vpme.de.
Yeah, break out to everywhere.
Go from there.
What about you, Morgan?
Wrongelectronics.com, but WORNG electronics.
Yeah, wrong spelt wrong.
Yeah.
Andrew, best place for people to get in touch or check stuff out?
Through the contact form at steadystatefate.com. That's the best way to get in touch with me. I promise that I'll post more news because I've kind of been slow on that. But yeah, that's the best way to get in contact.
Yeah, cool. Joran, best place if you can get in touch.
Yeah, uranolog.com and all the Twitter kind of places, Instagram, the usual place. Yeah.
Lastly, Jason, Instro.
Yeah, instromodular.com is the new URL. Instro Media, the old one, it'll still link through. There's a new website coming soon. I've got a temporary one up at the moment that's all still Squarespace. But, as far as social media goes, Instagram's probably the most active spot I'm on. Or just posting random updates of what I'm working on.
Yeah, great. Well, any questions from anyone, either live or that chooses to watch this back afterwards? I'll ask anyone that was here anything that you leave as a comment. There's just a general thanks and cheers for everyone's time in the live chat from some of the people watching. Thanks for watching live. It's nice to have a bit of interaction. And selfishly for me, it's been a nice kind of unwind bookmark to end Superbooth-ish. I still need to feel like I catch up. But yeah, cool. Thanks everyone for their time. Good to just chat, and we'll see everyone soon. Cheers.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Cheers.
Thanks.